This is the story of Mae Weems, a native of Waterloo. Ms. Weems participated very actively in the civil rights movement. She marched and protested against racial discrimination. Ms. Weems quickly rose as a civil rights activist and community leader in Waterloo. Her outspoken nature made her an ideal activist who remained steadfast under pressure and when the stakes were high. Ms. Weems' voice for racial justice and equality rings loud and clear despite many decades of political activism. In our interview, she discusses her relationship with national civil rights leaders with whom she collaborated. She was at the front of local efforts to fight racial discrimination in employment and education in Waterloo. Ms. Weems challenged major businesses which were slow to enforce government mandates on affirmative action. She started educational programs for young people and encouraged them to remain in school. When and where were you born?
I was born right here in Waterloo, Iowa in 1926, and I live about 4 blocks from where I was born right now.
What were the conditions like? What was the environment like? What were the people like?
I was poor, but I didn't know I was poor until I started reading the statistics now that says what people had then and what they have now. But I was in a 3-family home. My mother died at childbirth, so I was handed down to my aunt. She raised me, and then when she passed away, then another aunt took me. And my father, who was not in the house at the time, was with the big bands.
Let's talk about your K through 12 experience, just your K through 12 experience. What elementary school, middle school, and high school did you attend in Waterloo?
I went to school at Grant. We didn't have preschool at that time. Okay. I went to school at Grant School. I stayed there until I went to Logan Junior High, which was downtown, no longer there. The city hall sits on the land that the junior high school I attended now sits there. And then I went to East High, and I graduated from East High.
From East High.
And during my time there, I was the first to lead the band, the first African-American to lead the band at East High.
You mentioned that you were part of the band at East High School.
Yes.
And your father at the same time, he's a musician himself.
Yes.
Okay. Did he influence you at all?
We had to play an instrument, and I played the trombone. If you see my lips now, this is red. I have a trombone lip, all the color came out of my lips. Okay. And every year, during the summertime, you wouldn't play your instrument, then you had to go back and get your lip back for September school starting. And that was quite an experience for me. Very few kids played instruments, especially a woman playing the trombone.
Tell me a little bit about some type of music they used to play when you played the trombone. What was your favorite song?
Well, when I played the trombone, I liked my dad also came to the school, and he was an assistant band instructor. Okay. So I was mostly to the classics. I liked the orchestra. I liked the song Claire de Lune, and I liked the songs, Beethoven, those things. Those are music, real music. And you can always play the band, but in the band instrument, you can not always play the orchestra music. It takes a lot of skill to play that. And I kind of like that. In the orchestra, I played the oboe, and I also played the violin.
Violin, okay. Did you sing it all?
I tried.
Did you? Okay.
I tried, and I still tried.
Do you?
I still tried.
You stick to the instruments?
Yes, I think I did.
Okay.
And I don't play any of them at all now.
Okay. So you would be at East, and I know that you would go on to college after that. In fact, to a number of different colleges, and you would get a number of different degrees. But specifically, I want to talk about your experience at the University of Iowa. Because I know that you would attend the University of Iowa, but you would leave after a semester or so. Tell me about that story, the story of that experience there.
Thank you. I went to school there. We went to school and we got what they call the Indy-Urban. That was a streetcar. And we got on the streetcar and went to Iowa City. And we had boxes. We didn't have luggage. We had boxes and we put a string on it. That was our modern luggage. And we went to this lady's house. And because we didn't have room to stay at the dorm, they didn't have African Americans in the dorm at the time. But there was a lady there that had a house for African Americans. She had a contract with the university, and her rooms were filled. And I found out later what so much filled is that it was a color thing. We were too dark to stay there. So they gave us another lady to stay. So we stayed at this other lady's house, who later, Mrs. Pugh, who moved here. But we were there 4 days, didn't register for school. And her husband owned a garage. And something happened, it blew up. Okay. And so after it blew up, we didn't have housing. And I had to come back home. And because I couldn't get housing while I was going to school.
So the separation of housing itself, how did you react to this? How did you deal with this, knowing that you have to stay in a separate housing quarters?
It's very heartbreaking to think that because of a color, the darker the color, that you had a separate housing. I can see separate housing for men, women, or maybe the richer, the poor, the less you have to pay. But it wasn't that at all. It was that they didn't want the darker ones. And when I got back home, I was determined I was going to go back to somebody's school. Mm-hmm. But I had to take a job.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about your professional life. It's very rich, and you've done a number of things in the community in the way of civil rights and combating racism and discrimination, sexism, all the isms. You've dealt with all of them at every level, whether it's politically or socially. In fact, I know the Courier has an article dated May 17th, 1961, and that's entitled Voice Protest on Discrimination. Explain what is taking place here and why.
After we came back from school and I had to work, I was trying to find out why is it that we are so segregated? What caused us to be segregated? And what were the issues? The issues that I saw as a teenager and was employment, it was education, and I thought if employment, we couldn't work any place but stock person, being a stock person or janitor. Okay, so that left me, I had to do that. We didn't have an education, we didn't have any black teachers, and there wasn't any jobs there for counselors or anything like that in the school system. So we had to take the lesser job. And I think our protest was to bring it to the attention of the public, these kinds of problems that we were having.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what it was like when you were standing there, and who were the people that were there with you? What was the mood like of the people as you're leading this protest?
The most exciting thing to me, the mood that wasn't the mood, it was exciting to me was, and so embarrassing, was that the African American people didn't understand why we were protesting. I mean, we tried to get their support. About 40% of the persons with us were white. And they understood very, very much. And we kind of researched why they weren't with us. And people would say, I got a job. If they see me down there, I'd lose my job. So we understood that. So the few of us continued to bring it to the forefront of the community.
Okay. You're fighting for black people, but you don't have the full support of black people. Interesting. And how did you deal with that? Knowing that's a whole nother dynamic. How did you deal with that?
First, I had to define what I was doing there. I mean, I saw this this situation where we didn't have as many African Americans following us. What was I to do about that? Would I be successful? It didn't bother me. I thought maybe I should continue for my personal satisfaction. That's what I did, for personal satisfaction. And so the first thing I had thought about doing was to check the source of the publicity. We went to the Courier. The Courier had a practice of labeling, race labeling, stereotyping.
How would you go in and fight that with the Courier directly? Because I know there had to be a lot of opposition from the Courier. From the Courier. What strategy would you use to go in and get that overturned?
Our first approach
Okay.
was to tell the editor and the staff at the Courier that people really didn't care what color you were, if you did anything right or wrong. They just want to know what was the news. State the news. There's a thing about a news that it's a lead. What's in the story? Who did it? When they do it? Who? When? Where? Those. And that's all they want to know. They didn't say anything about race. Well, they kept persisting, so the union got into it, and we showed them the effects of what it does after you leave Black Hawk County. It told the neighboring surrounding territories that subscribed to the Courier that everything you read about African American was bad. And we showed this to them. And that's what they realized.
Because you have these small towns like Waverly,
yes,
Dyke,
that's right.
you know,
Hudson.
Jessup, you know, these people are getting the news, and you're saying the only thing that they're showing is negative publicity.
That's right.
It's negative publicity. You would also serve the African American community in another capacity. You were involved with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, otherwise known as the NAACP. In fact, you were president
Yes.
of the Waterloo chapter. Tell me, as president, what was your greatest accomplishment?
I admired NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, because it was started by white people for the advancement of African Americans, because they were slaves and not treated as human beings. And so that connected to what I was doing at that time too. And so what we did as president, I would get issues. And on our monthly meeting, we talk about the issues of welfare. Are you getting welfare? Okay. Are you getting housing? Are you in education? And our meetings would be 100 people standing around, because we were giving them what they've been wanting to know, why we haven't had it before. Mm-hmm. And then what we did, we also went and got other people working with us. We got the labor unions working with us, and they joined the NAACP.
Okay, so you have a number of things that you were dealing with. Give me another anecdote of some of the discrimination that you guys dealt with.
Before I got to be president, I was with the union.
Okay.
And in the union, I played a role as director of the civil rights for the union. And I took a mandate. I thought it seriously, what we threw out the community, and I thought, what should we do? And I said, we should have a mandate that says it's illegal, it's against the law to discriminate against someone because of their color. Mm. And so I got that passed locally. Then I went to the Black Hawk County Union Council that's made up of all the councils here, UAW, Teamsters, okay, and got it passed there. Then I went to my state union, got that mandate passed there, that the union should be involved with discrimination in the unions, in the plant where they work, and full support in the community. So I went to the state, got the state to pass it. Then I went to the regional conventions, got them to pass it. Then I went to our national and got them to pass it. And when the thing came down national, that meant that financially, all those institutions were fed with the finance for those unions to continue. NAACP could not continue with poor people without jobs. It had to have that fueling of the other organizations.
Let's talk about specifically some of the unions that you worked with yourself.
Well, I work with UAW, which is 838. Okay. That's the John Deere. We had to identify why there were our problem with the union through the NAACP. We found out that the foundry was all 100% African American.
Okay.
So in our study, we found out that in the South, cotton, African American people made cotton king because they could stand the heat.
Okay.
But then polyester came in, and when polyester came in, that gave the boot to cotton. So the people had to move because they didn't need the cotton picker so much anymore, and they had a cotton picking machine that was invented by an African American. Okay. So they started moving different places. Then as they migrate to the north, this huge migration, there was a problem of feeding the people in the agriculture. They had the horses and all like that. Then John Deere gave the world the steel plow. But the plow had to be made in the foundry. It's hot in the foundry, so that heat people who could stand the heat were asked to come there and get in the foundry. So we could always stand the heat. So that's why the foundry was loaded with the people, and that's why all of them came here to work in John Deere from the South, because they could stand the heat. But then when the Union took over, the Union 838, they looked and saw, why would all African Americans be in there? You couldn't even see your face. Said the Union rule says that you must be promoted within the ranks of the Union, which means if they've been there 14 years, somebody get hired, they got to go there and go through. So since they started putting other than African Americans in the union, in the foundry, they got it so it was a white glove. There was no dust, no more smoke in there, because there was white movement in there. And that's how black moved up.
They're looking at regulations stricter.
The unions did it.
They're paying more attention to the regulations in the foundry as far as health.
That's it.
Because many African Americans were dying from lung cancer and stuff like that. Black lung, okay. They were getting these diseases. But now that here you are examining this issue of too many African Americans being put in the foundry and not moving up in the responsibility of the union. I know also, not only did you work for the union that was working under or working within John Deere, what about Rath? Did you work with the union there?
Yes, I was an officer at Rath.
Okay.
I was, I just got back from Iowa City, and they had a man named Charles Pearson ask me if I would take a test for the Rath, and I asked what was the test for. The test that they had to give was to permit African American women to leave the janitorial service and go into the plant. I couldn't think of what kind of test could they give to tell you when you stop mopping that you can go into the plant. But anyway, I took the test, and I said to the man giving the test, how long had they been there? He said, they would have been there 14 years in the plant, mopping and scrubbing. And so I said, then we take this test, and they get out if I pass the test? Oh yeah, it's fine. I said, but I don't have to go in the packing house because I don't like to be around blood or like that. He said, you won't have to be there. Much to my disappointment, I passed the test, and I was the one who had to go work. And they put me in a place called Lincoln and Tyne, where pepperoni, which is a very pizza product now, and it was dismal and very gloomy. And I said, fine, I'll be here just 1 month. After 1 month, you can bid out. And I bid out, and I worked in union from then on. I never hit the plant again.
Okay.
So
it's so you bid out.
Yes,
okay.
It's the bidding process that freed the African Americans out of the foundry of John Deere. It's the bidding process that got black women out of the janitorial service into the plant, ham boning, the cleaner parts of the canning, the other baking room of the packing house.
I mean, because these are factory giants.
Yes.
You know, and they're accountable. You know, they're accountable for some of the decisions that they make. In fact, some of the decisions, bad decisions, caused many African Americans to die as a result of this. Now, also, I know that, so not only were you working hard and steadfast with the adults in the community, with African American men and women with jobs and employment, you were also paying attention to the youth as well. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the Waterloo Youth Achievement League.
I really prize that inspiration that the Lord gave me to start that. I was in school one day, and I saw visiting, and I saw the couple of children in my neighborhood, and I asked, were they graduating? They said, yes. What are you going to do? She said, I think I'm going to go to John Deere. And I said, where should I? I think work in the foundry. And I said, about college? She said, oh, I can't go to college. They never, when I got them out, I had a meeting and called all the African American children together. They had never been counseled. They had never, no one that came to them when they had the, what do you call them? The representative from the colleges came to them. No one called them out. And so they were left out. And so I decided to get a bus. I got 2 buses. Told the superintendent of school, Jack Logan, that I wanted to take the children up to University of Northern Iowa, UNI. Dr. Pendergraft was up here at the time, and I talked to him. And he agreed to let me bring 2 busloads of children here to see what it was like being on campus. There was only 1 African American up here on campus.
Okay.
And so and what we did, we assigned every white child a black child. when they got off the bus. And whatever that white child was, teacher, sports, whatever, that child was to follow that person around that day. And Dr. Pendergraft fixed it so they had lunch that day. And after it was over, they got back on the bus and went back to school. Some of the African Americans thought campus was something you put over a truck, canvas, for garbage.
Okay.
Some people thought that, and then somebody said, "Oh, this is really, this is easy. We could go to school. It's like going to school." And from that day on, and then Dr. Pendergraft also gave 15 scholarships to African Americans to come to UNI. They've been coming here ever since.
Ah, that's great. That's great. And so this is a program that you start yourself.
Yes.
Okay. And so this is great. So you're pulling the youth out of the community, you're pulling them out of the community, and you're exposing them to another opportunity. In fact, a brighter, a better one.
Yeah. Then, my question was, why didn't some of those children talk to counselors? Why didn't the counselors? It's because they saw in the paper also that they were all going to be bad anyway. Mm-hmm. They were all going to be criminals anyway. Mm-hmm. They didn't ever anything about them, so they just kept the status quo.
So now the counselors are contributing to the detriment of the future of African American children by the stereotypical images. So
the children had to have a black teacher. They had to, because only thing they saw in the school system is what they could emulate. And they didn't think they could be a teacher because teachers are all white. And so they thought, well, the best thing they could do is go to the packing house or go to the John Deere. So that was very important why we fought very hard. Another demonstration was to get black teachers and black counselors in the school system.
Mm-hmm. The Coracott win of one of your events that you had brought a national figure to Waterloo, Sonny Liston, a professional boxer.
Yes.
He was a icon during that time period. How did this all develop? Tell me the story behind bringing Sonny Liston to talk.
He was a champion.
Okay.
He was a champion, and I wanted the kids to see a champion. They like to fight. The kids like to fight. They could fight in the streets. And if that's really what they want to fight, go fight and make money, Okay. And then Sonny Liston had a story to tell. He told them that the reason he got to be a champion, he beat up 4 guys at one time. And the man said, they said, "Come here, I want you to fight for me." That's how he got it. So there's, just like Jackie Robinson, Branch Rickey saw him and took a chance on him. And that's why Sonny Liston said he got it. So Sonny Liston was able to talk to them. And I thought they should see a champion. And that's what I did for Youth Achievement League. I brought them into seeing champions at that early age.
Great. You're aware of a number of issues at a number of different levels. And in fact, I know that here you are thinking politically as you would run for councilwoman of the 4th Ward during the mid-'60s. Okay, even though you would not win, obviously you recognize some issues there. You ran for the position. You recognize some issues. Tell me some of the issues you recognized, and what would you learn or gain from that experience itself?
I did not think I would not win. I thought I would win. I thought I would be a winner because I thought about justice that I had been trying to display in the community. But there was another plan. What happened was after I started to run, somebody else, a white person, came and got a barber to run against me just to break the vote. Okay. So that's what that happened. Okay. And so he knew nothing about issues, but that was a plan. And so it didn't break my spirit. It just showed we had other things to do. If you're ready to plan, there's other things you must do. If you plan to vote or register to vote or want to win, there's other thing we have to do. We have culprits in the community that plays us against each other.
Okay, you're campaigning, you're preparing for the seat on the city council. What were some of the things that you had in mind? Tell me one thing that you had in mind is that you were going to deal with once you had won that election, if you were to win it.
I thought, well, first of all, my platform was jobs. Okay. If you have a job, you have too much to lose to be a criminal. If you have a job, you can keep your family together. If you have a job, you feel good about yourself. That was my number 1 platform, jobs. Number 2 was housing. We were segregated, lived on the tracks. Well, some of us are still on the tracks. And so, and education was the 3rd one. Those are my platform.
You're obviously a mover and a shaker in the community, and you have a vision. I know you're working with a national organization. You were labor secretary for an organization called the Foundation for Freedom and Democracy in Community. So you're working for this organization, and under the guise of this organization, this national organization, tell me how you'd be inspired to develop a stamp. You would design a stamp yourself. Tell me the story behind that.
We need to get a message out. What better message can you do with a stamp?
Yes.
You know, freedom of residence, a stamp that people could use that, and we need to see that. And they were denied the right to know where we are, what we can achieve, and if they see a stamp, oh, freedom of residence, or whatever we want to do. And so I found this national organization lobbying in Washington when I was there. And I saw their platform, and I was encouraged by that, so I joined them. And not only did they do the freedom of residence to get a stamp out to the nation, they also went in every city and brought issues out from the mayor's office, city hall, to the people. They did that.
Interesting. Wow. So now here you are in the trenches again, sending out a message, because you would send out, there's a lot I learned about you, that you would send out a lot of messages, you know, a lot of messages. In fact, I know from going to that, you would be involved in another march, again, to send a message to the community, a march on City Hall that I want to talk about. This was again in the June 1966. This also made the Courier. Here you are with a number of people, marchers down at City Hall, protesting and marching, trying to send out a message to the city, the city of Waterloo. What message were you trying to send there, and why?
Most of the marches I like to emphasize was mostly done by my children. I had 7. I had Jim, Vernon, Ruby, Kathy, Frida, Freddie, Mark. And they were with me. And my husband, Eugene Weems, he was with me. I would go down to the winos, what they call the wino country, and I picked them up. Worthy. They were in the winos because they couldn't get jobs, so they had to drink their problems away. I understood this. And so they were our forefront. So that was what made up our group. Then as they kept swelling the group, then other people would join them. And so we thought the place to take this was to the City Hall, to the City Fathers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So would they hear the message, or would they turn their ear away?
Oh no, they heard the message because we were in the front door.
You mentioned King. Tell me a little about your relationship with King. How did you meet him? How did you meet King? And tell me the story of how you brought him here and why he actually came to Waterloo.
Well, I was at the Union, and I was on a committee that was picked by the President of the United States to serve on the committee writing the laws for the nation on justice. And we were assigned this White House assignment, and our president of our committee was Vice President Nixon, and there's 14 of us across the nation. And our objective was to start writing the laws. At noontime, we had a lunch, and at noontime we go in the Oval Room for lunch, and there's 14 of us, so there was 16 plates, which means the president, his plate, and our guest speaker. And so when I walked into the room, I saw the African American by the door, but I was so busy because I was so glad to be in the White House, and that I wanted to be sure everybody knew I was there. So I went right up to the dais and I sat down. And it came on the program that I was to give the welcome. So I walked in, gave the welcome, and I sat down. And then they said, we will now have the president of Colchester College give the prayer. He said, Mr. President, Vice President Nixon, I thank you for the invitation, but I brought a student with me that will give you the prayer. And I said, oh my God, I know he's gonna put that Negro up there. And I just turned around, looked around, you know. I wanted to make sure no one took it from me that I was in the White House. And so he asked this man to come up to give the prayer. And there was a chair sitting next to me at the table, no one used, but there was no seats out there, so he had to stand up against the wall. And so he got up and he gave the prayer. His prayer was so profound when he got through. I said, sir, Dr. King, Reverend King, would you come this way? And he sat there. And from that chair next to me, I brought him here to my house.
Okay.
He didn't go home to get a coat or nothing. So he came to Waterloo. It was cold. It started snowing. And I went to, we stayed at the Russell Lamson Hotel, and we would be giving them a pin for the door. And I took him to a Palace Clothers. Palace Clothers gave him a suit. Took him to Montgomery Ward across the street. He got long underwear. He wanted long underwear. And he wanted some boots. And while we were with the Palace Clothers, and they gave him a coat and everything, he asked, "Is this something you can give my wife?" And they gave his wife a tuxedo coat, white fur down the front. It was red. He carried that coat with him everywhere he went. He did not want that coat to leave him. And I talked to Coretta many times about that. She said, "I was so happy when he brought that coat home." But while he was here, he came back to me, and so I called Dr. Pendergraft at the university. I said, "I got a man here that you must see." But meanwhile, there was a big movement against me. Some ministers here said that I brought a jackleg preacher here, and they did not want to come over to West Side to hear him, and that they didn't encourage other people to go because he was a troublemaker, that he had been roaming through the land, causing a lot of trouble. And so that night it was packed, more whites than blacks. Dr. King. The next morning he came to you and I, and he spoke up here. Thunderous group welcomed him. He made a tape, and the tape that they have, they sent down, and it's in their museum down there right now. And then after that, I took him to Iowa City. Dr. Bultina, Louis Bultina, which was vice president, I think at the time, drove him to Iowa City because it was snowing. I was afraid to drive to Iowa City to snow. We got money for the Montgomery boycott to places through the university. So this university played a role in educating our children, in bringing the issues to front, and taking in our speakers, helping us to pay for the expense.
The in-home visit, he's at your house, he stayed all night.
Well, what was that like? We got it that night from on the plane, and I said to my husband, you got to hear this preacher. I told my husband, you got to hear this preacher. So we made room for him to stay that night, and he stayed 2 days. And I got thinking, I should put him out there in the arena, where you have a big hotel like that. So we moved him to the hotel where he have press conference, because he wanted to tell the people about the Montgomery boycott, about all his trips. And we did it. We had the press conference at the Russell Lamson Hotel. That's why we moved to Russell Lamson Hotel.
Okay, interesting. So now, here it is, yourself, an icon within the city, rubbing shoulders with another icon. You both clearly have the same vision.
But we weren't icons there. We were troublemakers. and people would say to me now, "Anna, how are you? Are you staying out of trouble?" That's what they would say.
Well, the change, the change. Everyone fears change.
Yes.
But this was change for the good. And so you're going to get to that, unfortunately. So again, but you're rubbing shoulders with King. I mean, this is impressive. And this says a lot about you and your character, not only as a person, but as a leader here. It says a lot about you being aggressive, persistent, and very professional. So he obviously was attracted to your demeanor and your poise. He saw that. It's clear. Tell me about his assassination. Here's a friend, a partner, a buddy, a co-worker, in a sense. You guys are both fighting the same fight. Here it is, 1968, April of 1968. He's assassinated. Where were you at when you got the news? And once you got the news, what was your reaction?
His death said to me, "We've got to carry on."
Okay.
Must carry on. That's all I heard. My heartbroken, we must carry on. Job to do, we must carry on.
And what, here you are in Waterloo. What was the reaction of the community? What was the mood, or?
Well, my house lit up like a football field. The press was there taking pictures. They wanted all the pictures. They know he had stayed there, and they know he had been here, and everybody felt, we had lost. It was a loss to us, a leader, but. I got the message, you must move on. And when we'd be together in that prayer, he'd pray. In the prayer, we all prayed that we've got a job to do.
Now, you would move on, and you would still be a force in the community, still a force. still doing your thing.
And misunderstood.
Yes, being misunderstood, okay. Working as program director for the Iowa Employment Services. I know there you would make a lot of things happen, and you would make a tremendous impact in the community as far as accomplishing your personal goals, as far as what you saw was important.
That's right.
For African Americans in the community. Tell me about your position there and some of your experiences and what you would do in the way of helping African Americans get jobs.
Cecil Reed from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a very profound citizen, dedicated to the rights of all people, was on the commission. He wanted someone to work in the employment office here. They never had African American. It would be called the unemployment office because blacks never got jobs out of there. So it was the employment office. So I was the first hired. And so I started getting jobs. First of all, I had to convince the community there was jobs down there for us. The second thing I did was we needed to they were moving the employment office out on University, way out of the city, and so I convinced them to get one down here. In 5 months' time, they built this new one right here in the heart of the black community, which made it very easy for us to identify with.
This is bad, because you're talking about they didn't realize there was jobs. That's right. How bleak it was, right. The situation was. They didn't even realize that. I'm sorry.
The main employment for African Americans was bootlegging joints.
Okay.
And we had red light houses. Prostitution was permitted, and no one wanted to go in the North End, and all these things you'd sell, whatever you'd steal, you could sell. And so we never had a chance to get the good jobs. And so I thought, here's a chance. And so what my job was to talk to employers to convince them. And one of my best examples of that was Mrs. Stevens, who was a minister's wife. Annie Stevens, her name. She came here from the South, and she's a very nice woman. I asked her if she could get John Deere, and they said they wouldn't hire her. And so I went to the credit union, and I told them this was a good woman, and she retired from that job. That shows you that sometimes they've missed a lot of Jackie Robinsons. They missed a lot of people. So, and this is another reason why I'm trying to show the people that most of the things they enjoy, they can't live a day without us, because most things they enjoy every day was invented by African Americans. But getting back to the employment office, as the director of special services for the job service, I was able to go around to all the employers and say, you're out of sync when you don't hire African Americans in your company. So every place in this city had African Americans working. Now it's not like that. It's not like that. And then I went and I promoted the state director of all the employment office. That led to chaos, because I had them changing their rules to include African Americans in their workforce, and they didn't like that. So they sent an African American man in to be manager. His job was to take my office. What would that do? And then don't let me leave the office at all. And so
to control you, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
And what a deal. So one day, he said that I told him, well, we're going to go on with the status quo. I got a job to do. And they told me I couldn't leave the office. They didn't have to leave the office. I took my vacation time and did everything, and then I went to court, and I won my case.
Yeah, you were suspended within the state. This is interesting. So they send another African American to kind of silence you or to control you.
Yes.
And then you have to take these guys to court based on their racism.
That's right.
Discrimination. Here you are trying to repair the problem they had you come in and fix, and here they are holding you up.
And to my sadness, the good-looking manager they sent in here from a little town got 5, 6 people, key people in our community, to be with him. So they all lost.
Oh my goodness.
They didn't realize. I know I was moving fast, and I don't know why I was moving. I just thought that it was the will of the Lord that I kept doing the things I did.
And so you're doing a lot here in the way for employment, because you brought an office here in the heart.
Yes.
In the heart of the African American community, there's an office there.
That's right.
Something that was direly needed. This is incredible. This is incredible. Also, your placing, because I know the Courier got an article of you standing in front of a group in a classroom next to a chalkboard, and that article is entitled the disadvantaged find concern for whole leads to placement.
That's right.
And so here you are conducting a class. Tell me a little bit about that and what you're doing.
What I thought to do is update them, show them the advantages of employment. They're missing good employees by not hiring African Americans. Then I told the African American leaders that they must start getting their children, keep them out of trouble, so that if they go to jail, they can't work at the bank. Mm-hmm. See, and so I conduct these classes every other day. And I brought in all the people into the office and let them enjoy the works that their taxpayers was affording. And so that's how I moved with them, with me.
I talked to a number of people that you've helped placed in jobs. We talked about John Deere, how such a poor job they were doing, but yet you were able to pull forward a gentleman by the name of Mike Cook, who's in the management position up there. Right. A great guy. He had a lot of things to say about you, a lot of good things to say about you. How did that develop? Every
month at my meeting, I have a key person come and talk to them. And at that time, I also invited John Deere president. He came. Okay. And as he came and sat at the table, he wrote out a receipt. He was an official of the company. He wrote out a receipt to somebody to go to college, and it was Mike Cook. Okay. Mike Cook came there. So Mike Cook he came to the meeting, that luncheon we had, to hear him speak. He was a senior in high school. John Deere would participate at all my monthly meetings. They would come and bring people. The human resource departments would send us their job orders. And there was one thing that I think the biggest thing with my work with job service was I was able to tell a company, you cannot put an order in there unless you have an African American on there. And if African American, no one must get placed until you find out why that African American didn't place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So you got that, and you got a number of other individuals that you can just keep naming for forever. You know, Alex Walker, a number of other people that you helped place.
We all worked together here. We were all down together, and I couldn't have done anything without everybody working together. The ministers, they came in, they saw what I was doing, and they helped me. And it was a team effort that got together. That's what made it. It was a change. Someone couldn't accept the change because there was so much arguing over here and unaccepted programs that they didn't want this. Why are we doing this now? At one time in Waterloo, we couldn't try on clothes downtown. We couldn't return clothes downtown. We couldn't get no credit downtown. We can only lay away things. But when you take something and try it on, you couldn't take it off. You had to take it with you. And so that was one of my first things I thought. Okay. You couldn't try on hats. Okay. So one of the things I did, I was ashamed of. I went to a hat store and put grease on my head, a lot of grease, and I tried on every hat in the store. Okay. Yeah, okay. That was a terrible thing to do. Another thing, we couldn't use a bathroom in the stores downtown. The blacks had to go 16 blocks home and then come back and shop. I broke that down. Okay.
All right. Man, again, in the trenches. Making it happen.
Well, people working together made a better Waterloo.
Well, again, of course, you couldn't do it without the support of the people.
That's right.
African Americans, white, what have you. That's right. But still, yet, it's clear to many that you were leading the charge. I mean, that's obvious. You were leading the charge. Mayor Leo Roof clearly acknowledges your contributions.
Yes.
You know, working hard in the community, making a lot of changes for the good. And in fact, I know that he would honor you. It was a surprise. It was a surprise recognition for Mae Weems and her work. What was your reaction to that when you received that award or that day? How did you react to that?
On the program that day was a woman named Anita Curtis, who was from Waterloo originally. She was over the CTA, Chicago Transit Authority in Chicago, and I had her as a speaker. And I was just so jubilant over her coming back to show people what come out of Waterloo and made big in Chicago. And then they gave me this award. And I thought, I should give it to her because she was the one who went there and made good. And he said, no, this is for you because we want you to know that you showed us that our workforce, being integrated, unity, is going to make a better Waterloo.
Definitely. You can't argue with that.
No.
You can't argue with that. Success is there. You're making strides, tremendous strides. In fact, I know you would go on and you would continue to conduct seminars at Allen Hospital today. Even your retirement, you still continue the fight because even though we made a lot of strides, obviously clear there's still more work to do. It's been wonderful speaking with you. It's been an honor, a privilege to sit here and talk to you, knowing all the things that you had accomplished, not for yourself, but also for the community as a whole. You truly are a leader, and you have a legacy that you have built and that you continue to build that would clearly stand the test of time.